to begin. How is everyone? Good. I asked that once. I asked it twice.
There's new people now. There's new people here.
That's great. We'll get the update from everybody, right, Dee?
Yes.
A balanced approach. Hey, awesome. Good to see you all. Let's start. We're going to be in Matthew 20:17, just picking up a little bit where we were last time. There's a great way Jesus was encouraging us to see everybody and to see, the greatness of relationships, even though it wasn't just that. It was kind of letting go of your claims to being perfect. He dealt with divorce. He dealt with families. He dealt with little children and having a faith like the littlest one of these and things like that. It's sort of an emptying of self-worth that doesn't come from God. And then now we're going to, what we sort of deconstructed, I think I said this towards the end last time, we kind of tore down the walls of our own pride in those different ways. And we're also going to be pushing ourselves towards what Christ promotes, especially as we get into like, all right, what are you about? So you can sort of take down the wealthy one who won't leave his wealth behind, right? As we looked at the rich man, and we can kind of take down the person who's like the disciple who's going to turn away the little ones. And now Jesus is also going to stand for something instead of just against things. And that's what we see as we near Jerusalem. We see what he's going to be about. The Messiah is going to do his thing. It's a Holy Week, so it gets really, really, really urgent and blunt as the Christ takes up the cross. So that'll be on our hearts and minds the next couple of weeks as we go into this. And very fitting, because we're going to start a new church year. And why did you come? And what is this all about? And that focus is the festival half of the church year anyway. So maybe we'll get there by Easter, or we'll start a new study after Easter. I have no idea, but this will be fun. I shouldn't make predictions. But let's start with a prayer, shall we? Lord Jesus, your will and way is beautiful and gorgeous, and we ask that you continue to open our eyes to its beauty, especially opening up our hearts to the way that you might work and see fit for your will to conduct itself in our lives. We ask, knowing that your will is better by far than ours in life, that you open us up to that will and way, that we continue to not just in a freelance way say this could go anywhere, but to know that in the cross and in anything that comes in our day, there is an intentional path that you have for the glory of your name in our hearts and lives. We have this certainty because of the very things we're going to study about your Son and the way that he went for us. Give us the certainty then that we are your children and we walk in the way of your love, your lowliness, and your glory, all at the same time. In your saving name we pray. Amen. All right, so Matthew 20, picking up at 17. Now Jesus is going up to Jerusalem. We've been nearby, other side of the river, but getting closer to Jerusalem. And I think Jericho is mentioned somewhere in there. We're going to have Jericho before we get to chapter 21. We're going to still be in Jericho. So we're about to enter Jerusalem. But Matthew all along has not been that concerned with the wheres and the whens. He's more concerned with the hearts of the people who are trying, or Jesus is trying to connect to them in a way that doesn't meet the eye, but in a way that showers his grace and mercy into receptive hearts. He is preparing the way for his entry, and that's where we are. So 17, he takes the 12 aside and he says to them, we are going up. And I'm going to see Jesus stand. The Messiah is going to stand for something. We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day he will be raised to life. Maybe there was more of a discussion. Maybe there was more words, but Matthew's just giving us this on the eve, and quote unquote, the eve of his entrance to Jerusalem. This is what he told his disciples, and it's all Matthew wants to put in our minds. This is what he said to them. How does he set this up to be an extra special announcement in verse 17?
He took them aside.
All right. You haven't taken them aside. What else was somebody going to mention?
Was all of them?
Yeah, you've got the 12, right? All 12. So it's, and maybe that reminds you that when we hear disciples in the Gospels, on occasion, that means a broader group of people, a broader group of followers who did spend a lot of time with him, but not as much as the 12. They weren't designated as the apostles or set apart like the 12 were. So here Matthew tells us this was just the 12, even though sometimes there's a larger group of disciples. Think of like John 6, when some of the disciples left Jesus. And because he said, I am the bread of life. And he made this, he put himself so much in the role of giving life that they couldn't take that from him. Only God could say, this is too much for us, right? So some disciples left. So there's these broader crowds, and this is just the 12. What else? I guess you don't have to read my mind. I could tell you I was thinking of the fact you have Jerusalem in 17, and they're going to Jerusalem 18. But this is actually happening. What was once a prediction like Matthew 16, the Son of Man will get used to. This is something, an idea I want in your heads. Now it's tomorrow's idea. Now it's, well, maybe not tomorrow literally, but it is the near idea. We are nearing Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem this is going to happen to me. So this is a very special announcement, as it's all getting smushed close. Time and thought are grabbed together. We are going up to Jerusalem. It was always a going up to Jerusalem, whether it was north or south. I think we think of heading up north, heading down south, but always up to Jerusalem because they spoke in elevation terms. So we're going up, going to climb the hill. Even though I don't think it was that huge. It's not that big. But so be it. So it's more or less a repeat of things he said before. I think it's interesting, you have Jewish leaders and Gentiles brought out. A global rejection. I guess you could say both Jew and Gentile, covers everybody, but raised to life. I put on your sheets, what have we been learning about Jesus and us? What we would like to claim, and really what we would will to do, maybe you think of our sinful natures, what's more natural for us to want, is exactly what Jesus leaves alone. And what Jesus claims here and wills to do is exactly what we would prefer to leave alone. Does that make sense? How would you explain that? Please, Ken.
Well, I think what the disciples really wanted Jesus to do was to take his power and reign.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had seen him do all these miracles, and said that he was God.
Yeah.
And so take your power and reign, and that's not what he does.
It just doesn't make sense that the good thing of God wouldn't include more of those easy to understand as good things. Who doesn't want healing people? But you then redefine good into greater good, right? Those are good things. These are good things. But Jesus said it himself, you're going to do greater things than you see me do. Even he pushed away, on a regular basis from looking at these outwardly slam dunk good things for something that would be a greater. I tell you, you will do greater things than these. And now we're going to get to see what some of that greater is. And talking about a crucified Christ, there's nothing better than that in all the world. And finding that you struggle and stumble along the way and bear a cross for the sake of his name. Boy, life doesn't get any better than that, quote unquote better. There is a hidden glory and a hidden joy to all of this. Even Jesus' joy, I'm sure, is that, in a sense, it's not something he's wearing on his face as he suffers and dies, or as he sweats with drops, all of this that's coming on him, but who for the joy set before him endured the cross. So he endures it, knowing its full goal and weight. So there's a lot of that. So we would, all these little slam dunk, selfless, why wouldn't you call this good? We encourage one another to abandon this. To abandon this way of thinking, I know what good is. That's just going to cause you a bunch of misery if you're going to say, I know what good retirement living would be. I know what good use of my college education would be. I know what a good service to God would be. I know what a good tomorrow would be. There's probably a greater good, and I don't know, but sign me up for the ride, and give me a heart to embrace the will of God. So Jesus goes a totally different way. He claims and wills something greater and sort of invites me into the will of the Son of Man, who is willing to have all of these things happen for a greater good, to understand why would he ever let these things happen to him. This is now the pressing question for the disciples. Why would that ever be good? And it's sort of left unanswered, except for the fact that he's going to come out raised to life. It's really left unresolved. Anything else there? Mocked and flogged and crucified.
Maybe how he would use his power. All the disciples, even at the cross, said, get down, you got the power to not do this, but he said, no, I have to do this, or your sins will not be forgiven. So his use of the power, his almighty power, was forgone until later.
Set aside deliberately. Yep. Set aside the use of his power so that in weakness he could become our strength. I wonder what it would be like to think of Gentiles not just mocking him, but who do you flog? And they knew who you crucify. When Rome really despises you and wants to make a lesson out of you, you crucify him, but also to do like the 40 lashings kind of thing, -1, on top of a crucifixion, that just seems morbid. That just seems twisted, you think of how didn't Pilate use it as a way to appease? He's trying to give them some version of punishment and acknowledgement to their claim, but still also trying to dismiss Jesus alive when he has him flogged. There's still something left, but then he come back and they force him, they want to crucify him too. So you just have such a fullness of rage, full rejection of him to flog and crucify. Well, let's go on to the next section and see the contrasting wills brought out again. What we want, what Jesus wants is boy, just to have verse 28 staring at you so close to his entrance into Jerusalem. Matthew's putting this here for a reason. So let's read 20 to 28. Who wants to read the whole thing for us? Anybody? Sue, go for it.
Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. "What do you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." "But you don't know what you are asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father." Then the 10 heard about this. They were indignant with the 2 brothers. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many."
The sons of thunder, the mother of Zebedee's sons. So their mother comes along also with, James and John, is it? Or no? Am I getting that wrong? I should have looked that up. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And she's going to request for them. She was involved. The mother is involved in this. And what did I ask about? What's the related significance of these details? Did you notice they kneeled down, and kneeling down asked a favor? And then the right and the left, and your kingdom, what are those you put all these details, how are those details related? That they knelt down and talked about being at his right and left in his kingdom.
Does kneeling down show reverence for him or respect?
Yeah, I think they're treating him like a king. You are treating him like a king. He is the authority, right? He's the one in charge, and they're going to kneel down out of respect for that sense with this request. So there's all the related family language. To be at the right and the left would be what kind of a position? If you're one in, like, Pharaoh's right-hand man, right, Ken?
Number 1 and number 2.
Mm-hmm. You're number 1, you're number 2, the people who are your closest counsel, the ones you give the greatest, I guess you delegate the most power to. They have your ear, you trust them, you use them. She wanted them to have these highest positions next to Jesus. And do you scold them for wanting to be close to Jesus like this? I don't think it's easy to navigate their hearts here and to necessarily say, is this sort of innocence? If you're gonna, who would ever want to claim the last place? Why not be closest to Jesus? Isn't this a good thing? If you were zealous for Jesus and his kingdom, is there an innocent zeal about this, or is it just, we obviously know that their kingdom idea was a very backwards kingdom, and so could have been something of a selfish notion. So do you label it as zeal or selfishness? It's sort of maybe it's not something we have to do. But you think about it, right? Like, this is sinful of them, isn't it? You think about it. But the focus really turns on the anger of the disciples later. But before we get to that, we should look at the reaction of Jesus. You don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I am going to drink? If you want to be the ones most intimately associated with Jesus and his kingdom, think about in Jesus' mind, what is the cup he's drinking? To be, I mean, you're talking about that whole rejection of the world. He's even going to be forsaken by God. You want to be the one most closely associated with that kind of kingdom. To drink, in terms of drinking that cup. I guess, doesn't this have in mind how the king would have people test his food before they, that you would share in drinking the cup, and this would be the trusted, privileged ones, very close, because you'd have to trust those people if they're gonna have that position. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? They say we can. Well, what is Jesus saying here? You will indeed drink from my cup.
I feel like he's referring to almost like communion, like, drinking his blood in remembrance of him. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I don't know if they would get, well, I know they wouldn't get that at this time. We get it as readers, a connection there. What are you thinking, Karen?
That they would suffer for his sake. They're his disciples.
Yeah. I wonder in some sort of condescending way where Jesus comes to their line of thinking, if he's saying to them a sort of a both and. The reader kind of is torn. I think we're torn. And to say, oh, that cup, you'll indeed drink from my cup, like, is Jesus saying this so that the reader later on is going to get, yeah, they will suffer for his name. Like you say. But more immediately, he could be giving them the sense of, what, in this innocent zeal or whatever, you will enjoy the place at my side. You will enjoy a fellowship with me. The fellowship with him in the cross and the way of suffering is always to be combined to the fellowship of his glory. In fact, whenever we weigh this cost, Peter and Paul, as they talk about suffering, they always give it a new definition and a twist. Is not suffering a discipline? Doesn't God love those, that he disciplines? And so we give it the word discipline, or suffering is always suffering for the sake of the kingdom and receives the kingdom's reward at the end. It's always tied to the glory that would follow. That just as we participate in his suffering, so we will also participate in his glory. So maybe we don't have to spread it out that, okay, is this the cup of suffering, or is it the cup of enjoyment of his kingdom with him? Maybe it's a both and. I'm just thinking out loud, but there is something to this that maybe meets them on their surface understanding of the kingdom and says, actually, I don't mind saying you will enjoy, and it's good encouragement for you who are going to suffer greatly for me, that you will drink the cup with me, but more fully than they realize. So there's probably a great way that we can just let that one sit with us, how we can enjoy the full drink as we do in the light of the fullness of his resurrection and his coming. We can appreciate these words all the more. But sitting at the right hand and the left, those belong for whom they've been prepared by my Father. These are all about gifts. God will give them in his grace, and the emphasis is on God's preparing a place out of his grace, and he will hand these things out on the basis of gift of grace and not on the basis of asking or being the first ones. So that's Jesus' answer. Anything else there so far? Please, Dee.
These people were not
yet to the point where they even understood what was going to happen, right?
Right.
I mean, they're still earthly kingdom, and even with Palm Sunday is like, I don't know how much later that is in this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't hit them until...
You don't know what you're asking. You don't know what you're asking. And earthly kingdom isn't involved in heaven, and it's not involved in the cross. And in either way, if you're thinking of something that's set up where we're really enjoying some good things here, you don't know what good is. And that again helps me see the cup differently. It helps me see the eternal life with God is the ultimate good, and the way to get there is the greater good. Better than I know. It's better than you know.
I think it's interesting too. It's the mother who came, not the sons themselves who initiated the asking. I don't know if they asked her to ask him.
Are they reporting? Hey, the time is getting close. We're getting close to Jerusalem. We all kind of know what we think is going to happen.
Is the mother traveling with them?
It's very possible, right? Maybe she's just finding them because they find a way to communicate, and she comes outside of Jerusalem or something. I don't know where she's.
It sounds like they're little kids, Grown men here, they can speak up for themselves if they listen to what they want.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of, it's like this big grab the bull by the horns, but you're right, it makes it seem like, why are you bringing mom along on this,
And not dad.
And not dad, and showing up in that culture and time and all that other stuff that she's going to show up and she's going to request this from Jesus. Salome?
Yeah. Salome. So she was a devoted follower. She was eyewitness to the crucifixion. She was one of the women that went to Easter Sunday.
She surfaces in the Gospels a lot. She does. She comes back by name. I have a book with the parallel Gospels in columns, so you could see the other accounts and who mentions a name or whatnot. Those are all great details. One of the things that's fun about having all of these scriptures open to us is you can compare and kind of think about those details some more. But it's also good to look at, okay, Matthew, you didn't tell me her name. You didn't tell me where she's coming from. You kind of get right to the question and let me think about drinking the cup and Jesus' words. And now you want me to deal with the disciples' anger too. Where you're going to spend some time on, Jesus has a long paragraph at the end. We don't even know what the disciples said. We just heard that they're upset. Why do you think they were angry? Well, you look at Jesus' response and you kind of can infer. They wanted to be lords. They're self-seeking. They're upset that these two would ask first. So it's their own greed that seems to be upset, rather than maybe a righteous wrath. But Jesus has some other teaching to do with a not so with you. Not so with you. Let's look at 25. Jesus called them together and called them all together. Does he hear this? How does he know that they're upset? Do they go privately to the sons of Zebedee? And do they go privately to James and John and get all upset? And Jesus is this omniscience? Matthew doesn't do all the links of the chain, if there are links of the chain, to say, and the disciples were angry and Jesus overheard, and so Jesus went and approached, and but of course Jesus doesn't have to overhear, but he calls them together and begins a speech. And lo and behold, it's exactly what they were thinking, and yet he starts to the side. You notice this again? Boy, I can't wait. I'm going to do it Friday Bible Breakfast to look at Paustian's indirect communication in the Old Testament, and maybe I really should I use them as testing ground, and then maybe when we get to May we'll do some of it ourselves. I can repeat it a little bit, but Do you see how Jesus is not in your face with their anger? He doesn't just, why are you so angry, you foolish disciples? I mean, you think of how blunt, how direct he could be with his omniscient knowing of their hearts. But instead he calls them together and he condemns the rulers of the Gentiles. In effect, doesn't he? He does say, not so with you, but he starts with, why don't you look at the side? Let's all rebuke. Let's see the rebuke that is deserved for the rulers who lord it over people. He is so, winsome. Is that what you call it? It's an indirect way that sort of opens you up and doesn't put up your defenses. To turn away Jesus' rebuking word that might be direct and say, not me. And immediately I would want to kick back to the finger that's pointed at me. So instead, he points to the side. And he says, look at this. You know that they lord it over. See how he's doing this again? They do it. They do this. The rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Let's all look at this and not imitate the way that they lord and exercise authority over other people. That's about power plays and controlling insurrection, right? The way they exercise their authority over people. They don't care about other people's wishes. They're putting themselves first. This is very often what happens to people in power. People that have the money that talks, right? So the people that are in these positions find a way to serve their interests with their position. And, it's funny, we did secular authority in church and state, Grace Bible Study days, and Luther says, boy, it's just such a rare bird to have a ruler who actually cares about the ones he's ruling, and isn't just invested in finding ways to do things that serve himself. So isn't this the way power often gets corrupted and is abused? Because God has instituted government Romans 13 says it so beautifully, for the sake of your safety, to punish the evildoer. It's fair and it's just and it's right for the well-being of a society, for the well-being of those governed. And Romans 13 is such a beautiful way of showing how an authority has been instituted to work. And now it comes back and says, all right, you look at how the rulers of the Gentiles often conduct this. They are abusing it for themselves. Any, comments or... I always talk too much. And this is viewed as greatness. Is that a hand, Eileen? Oh.
No, a hand itches.
Mm-hmm. But this would be the world's view of greatness. Who wouldn't want to just say and it's done? Who doesn't want to just surround yourself with whatever you choose to surround yourself with, instead of being the person where it's decided for me? Oh, the life where it's decided for me. Woe is me. We resist this. We think that we just redefined freedom. Freedom is to be who I want and to choose what I want and to be in control. And here Jesus opens the door he's going to be governed by the will of God for our sake. And he's going to close this out with, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Now, doesn't that just filled with a whole world of selflessness and love and the benefit of others? When you think of the servant and the slave, and you tell me what to do and I'll do it, your will be done, it just screams it's a whole world here of a different will, a different wanting that's in the very heart of God, and it calls us to imitate it. He is already calling the disciples to imitate him in what he's about to do. And this at the very right in between the Son of Man is going, will be delivered over, flogged and crucified, and will rise again. And you're going to see it. This is Holy Week. Exciting. Time to see service. Time to see greatness in the eyes of God. To be a ransom for many. Boy, doesn't it drives you then to the Son of Man would get to do this. The principle is there in service. Not so like you, be a servant, be a slave. But only Jesus presses it so far and can accomplish so much by it that he can say, a ransom for many. Oh, it's like the top of the mountain in the words of Jesus. That this is my greatness, and this is my splendor. I would be a ransom price for many. So I'm pulling us out of a totally different worldview and promoting something new. And that something new, in the end, it's not my service. It ends with his. Ooh, I love that. And ends with his ransom. To live is then Christ. If it weren't for his ransom, I would be no servant. This has huge implications for where we're going, even this Sunday, looking at spiritual gifts, looking at the talents given to servants from the master. To the 5, he gave 5. To the 2, he gave 2. To the 1, he gave 1, and the 1 buried it. That's our parable this Sunday in church. So it's the same thing. To live is Christ, and they put their gifts into service. Gifts are gifts for what? They're not gifts for you. They're gifts for service. Go put it to work. Anyway, it's the mindset of the church till our Lord Jesus comes again. And at the pinnacle of it all is the Christ who made it all possible and the ransom for many. Well, let's go on to the next section. Matthew 20:29 to 34. This is the last thing that happens now before the entry into Jerusalem. Somebody else want to read 29 to 34? Don't be bashful, Karen. Thank you.
As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet, but they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him.
Wow. So, we've had blind men before ask for Jesus' help. He's healed them in quiet ways, side streets. Do you remember sometimes he didn't always do miracles in front of the other people, but he pulled a blind man aside into an alley and put the spit on the ground and made some mud, very intimate and personal, one-to-one thing. Here is, Matthew introduces this as a hugely public event. They're leaving Jericho. It's getting close to Jerusalem. This is all going to happen in the large crowd of followers. Nothing wrong with this. They're following Jesus. But then you start to see something going wrong. 2 blind men are sitting by the roadside and shouting, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." This, I think, is so cool that this is right in front of the entry to Jerusalem, because what do we say? What has the church passed on to you as your worship prayer to start? It's, "Lord, have mercy on us." We shout it to Jesus because of our need. This is a needy people. We are a needy people. And here, I'm sermoning right now, but you get how these blind men need Jesus. And for some reason, the large crowd insists that they be silenced. And that the need, no, this isn't, it's not for you, or something like that. I don't know. You just don't get it. The crowd rebukes them and tells them to be quiet. Why? We're in a hurry for the kingdom to start? What is this? Why would you ever stop this? I don't really have an answer. Just, that's something I want to think about. What is going on? From the whole view of the crowd, large crowd, they're following Jesus like you think that they want what he wants, and then they get in the way of the ones calling him Son of David, the promised Messiah, the coming king, right? The king promised to David to sit on his throne forever. They plead for his mercy, for his help, and they say no. Only those who are not looking to Jesus in terms of need. If I needed him and you needed him and we all knew how much we needed him, when you get grace, you're motivated by the mercy and what Jesus has really come to give. You don't get in the way. I don't want to anyway, right? But from the perspective of the large... So I want to walk through this. I'm thinking a little bit out loud, but let's walk through this in view of the different parties, because everybody is involved the whole way. Jesus and the crowd and us, the reader, and the blind men along the road. They're all involved in everything that takes place, and how does this impact them? So if you were to walk through the account from the perspective of the large crowd, what's going on in your minds as you see the two blind men sitting by the road shouting? We don't really know, but we can guess.
It's like the other unworthy people.
Unworthy people. Yeah. Your blindness, if this is a spiritual place, and we think that everything could be connected to your sin and God, and this is the Messiah who has come, you are the one he made you blind from birth. So they are saying he doesn't want you. He's already told you that by the fact that you're blind or crippled or lame. You cling to mercy because you know you have no worth. We have worth. You know you have no worth. You have to cry out for mercy. You know your need, especially spiritual. So the physical and the spiritual are intertwined. Maybe that's the best answer to why the crowd is pushing them away. They are better than the two blind men on the side of the road. Jesus doesn't care for you. The coming king does not. So they rebuke them and tell them to be quiet, and they shout all the louder, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. I think it's interesting that the story didn't get interrupted. Jesus doesn't stop as soon as he hears it the first time. As soon as he knows that the shout is off their lips. He lets the crowd rebuke, and he lets them, maybe I'm doing this from the perspective of Jesus now, but he lets the crowd rebuke, and he lets the cry, have mercy on us, be all the louder, and more people can hear it. And everybody now knows why he stops. He's paying attention for mercy. At the word mercy, it stops him, and he responds. He ignores all the rest, but he will stop for mercy. Mercy stops him in his tracks, and he heals. And he's filled with what? Compassion. This is something that is used a couple times in Matthew's gospel, like the sheep without a shepherd. Jesus had compassion on them and feeds the 5,000. He is rocked to his core. You think of the heart of God whenever you cry out, Lord, have mercy, and see if he will not answer that with an absolution and meet your need with his fullness and with his healing. Oh, it's so beautiful. And he lets this cry be loud. He lets it be heard, and he stops right there. This is not for the side alley. This is for everybody now to know. He's coming into Jerusalem. He is grabbing attention to himself. And he is now saying, it's time for people to know my kingdom and me the king. And they're going to see me go to the cross. I want them all to know this. I want all Jerusalem to hear about it. Everybody following me in, and everybody where we're going. Let them hear the announcement. A king is coming. And as he's calling for this. And it's so beautiful the way he calls attention to mercy right before he comes in. And he meets that need out of his beautiful compassion and touches their eyes. They receive their sight. And now we enter Jerusalem. Isn't that cool? So think about the bang, bang, bang message. The Son of Man is going to be crucified and die. The Son of Man did not come to serve, to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom. And now, Lord, have mercy on us. Yes, when everybody else is saying no. Woo! And then we enter Jerusalem. Bang. So we have to call this off so the big people can come in, but so it is. We'll have to go with chapter 21 next time.
I think
go ahead, Sue.
Too, sometimes, this is the physical blindness, but I think in our spiritual blindness, we say, having mercy on us.
Absolutely. It puts these words, it puts the thoughts. And I do, like you said before, and you said it really well, these blind men, you probably have in the minds of people spiritual and physical need together. Although they despised their spiritual need. You are sinners. That's why you're blind. So there's probably something to all of this, and great for us to see the wonderful mercy, lowly mercy of Jesus. He's painting a picture right in front of us of the will of God and the wanting of God, the kind of king he has come to be. All right, blessings to you. I feel like it's almost Holy Week, and we're right here in the midst of it all. But, don't worry, we'll take our time. He's not on the cross yet. We got all these great parables and Holy Week adventures to have first. All right, have a great night.